Welcome to Global Insights on the Lead from New Lines Magazine. I'm Kwangu, Liwewe. In our inaugural episode, we take a look at India's monumental general election set to commence on April the 19th and run through to June the 4th. This poll features over 900 million registered voters in the world's most populous country of 14 billion. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, a prominent figure on the international stage, is seeking a third term in office. His Bharatiya Janata Party, known for its Hindu nationalist ideology, is favoured to win the polls, indicating a continuation of Modi's leadership. However, the political landscape is not without its complexities. As the nation gears up for a 44-day-long voting period, we explore the key dynamics, controversies, and implications surrounding this pivotal moment in India's democracy. Joining me now to dissect the various factors shaping this election is our South Asia editor, Surbhi Gupta. Welcome to Global Insights, Surbhi.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay, let's dive into India's elections. Now, India is touted as the world's largest democracy. What exactly does this mean? Is it because it's a democratic country with the largest population, or is it because of its democratic credentials? India is known for having a great history of holding regular elections with very high voter participation. And India also has a sound constitution that's in line with the ideals of democracy. So what exactly does this world's largest democracy mean?
I think a mix of both. India is the most populous country in the world and a democracy, and it has over 970 million registered voters. And conducting free and fair elections for such a huge population is a huge task. And that's why they kind of happen over several phases. This time they will last 44 days, so that it can be ensured that they're as smooth and free and fair as possible. And also, with the country being so huge with remote corners, election officers often have to trek and travel to remote areas, deep forests to reach voters. And over the last over 7 decades since India got its independence, democracy has been its strength and its identity. And despite all the ups and downs, we've had consistent elections both at the national and state level. Perhaps, it was the only blip was during the emergency declared in the mid 70s when all elections were postponed, but that emergency lasted for about 2 years. And even like you said, the voter turnout is always very, very high. Like in 2019, it drew like a 67% turnout. And, I think in the US, it was 66. So it's pretty high. And it's also like elections in India are very, very vibrant. People love to engage in debate and discussion, even if it's like, or like on voting blocks, like caste-based politics, or even it's religion, the different, it's not only like two parties that kind of contest the elections. There are like multiple parties on the regional level, national level. So, whatever the discussions, debates on it, be it even like, like looking at women and how they are voting or first time voters, like Indians love to deeply engage in our issues. And the issues are also very India centric. But I think we'll discuss the, things that have been happening recently, kind of have cast light on if this particular election will be free and fair. So yeah, let's see how that goes and how the upcoming elections, kind of the issues that they kind of throw for us.
But talking about democracy in itself, but India has also had its own challenges, such as the increasing influence of Hindu nationalism, hasn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. Especially in the last decade or so since the BJP has come to power, because the BJP kind of, when it was kind of coming up, was an up and coming party. The one issue that it kind of rallied behind was the Ram Temple issue, which kind of culminated recently with its inauguration, the ceremony kind of presided by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and kind of gave to a rise of, what kind of be grappling with like political Hinduism. That's something I kind of delved in deep with in another podcast of ours, at the lead with Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, on what that meant, because it kind of removed all lines between religion and state in India, which kind of had not been seen before to such an extent. And it's kind, like after that we're kind of seeing some like a similar playbook of sorts being used for other Hindu temples, which are kind of also in contestation with mosques, and so this is like, and so this is one issue, which the BJP, of course, it kind of gained popularity over, and these were issues like which kind of were the bone of contention between the Hindus and the Muslims in India, and how, like, we've seen the marginalization of minorities, especially Muslims, the way they've been, in a way, also demonized. All of this used to be there, but it was kind of in the fringe. But in the last decade, slowly and steadily, we've seen how kind of it has become like a mainstream culture of sorts. And the anti the Citizenship Amendment Act that was kind of introduced in 2019, and which saw protests, like massive protests led by Muslim women, also recently saw implementation. So that is also like a tool to kind of woo Hindus, because they view like the right wing views like India to be like a Hindu majority country with with Hindus to take center stage and be favored. So
Just picking up on those protests you talked about, or to do with the notification of the Citizens Amendment Act. Now, this act expedites citizenship for persecuted minorities, religious minorities. Those are from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, but it does exclude the Muslims. And you have talked about the protests we saw in 2019. But what's happening now? We've hardly seen any protests this time around.
Yeah, so I think we haven't seen, we saw like very sporadic protests in like some corners of the country, but not in like the big cities like Delhi or Mumbai, especially Delhi, that kind of led in the protests and started there. And I was in Delhi at that time covering these protests. So, but I think since then, what has happened is there has been like the space to protest peacefully has also been reduced. There has been a clampdown. We saw that even during the recent farmers' protests, those who that happened even during 2022, and even like the 2019 protests kind of ended, one would say, with like riots in Delhi, and that moment was kind of used to arrest many activists who were active during the protest movement, and they were jailed under the Terrorism Act. So you saw the way protest, any kind of protest, those how activists were treated. So it's like created a bit of a sense of like an environment of fear. So there not being any protest doesn't mean there is no opposition, but at the same time, yeah, I think it's like the issue is also very polarizing. For that, the amendment excluded Muslims and kind of was giving citizenship on the basis of religion, was kind of unsettling for many people who thought that like India was a country where it was like it would not grant citizenship on the lines of religion. It's for everybody, irrespective of your religion, background, caste, creed, everything. But I think for that, there is also this other section which feels like, if it's also like it's a Hindu majority country, and it's a country for Hindus, and if there are persecuted religious minorities, where else would they go? They would come here. So they should be this should be like a country or land where they can kind of come and take refuge. So it's also like a very polarizing issue, and again, like something that goes in line with the whole Hindu nationalist project, and it was like something that the government was, they were they had intent. They wanted to implement this despite the massive protests that we saw in 2019. They went ahead, and ahead of the elections have issued this notification.
Yeah. So, with elections slated for April the 19th right through to the 1st of June. That's 44 days. We are seeing an issue of accountability and transparency now coming up. And this is with regards to political party funding through a mechanism that's called electoral bonds. There's been a damning revelation about donations to the BJP from companies under investigation for tax evasion, and others are under investigation for fraud. What are the implications, or what implications does this have on governance in the country and basically public trust in India's political process?
Of course, politics and money have always gone hand in hand, and and Indian elections are, I think, the most expensive in the world. Like they cost about, I think, over 8 million in 2019, I think, which are more expensive than the US elections. So, there is a sense that, of course, politics and money go hand in hand. But, like this whole issue of electoral funds that I'll explain soon, it's kind of like getting this whole issue of political funding, political finance in like the larger media discussion. We finally have data to kind of, see, like, I think everybody kind of already has this understanding that, the world of, money and politics and is like very dirty, it's very murky. But this kind of the data that of electoral bonds that was recently made available kind of showed that. So basically, this was. I think people perhaps even did not realize as much, or there was not much discussion about how elections were funded or how parties got their money. Like, I think that those underground links, perhaps people had sense. But this, this electoral bonds, they were introduced in 2017, ahead of the previous, like last elections. And at that time, the finance minister then said it's to cleanse the system, make it more transparent, because there was so much black money that would be floating, or like political parties would get funding or money in cash. So they're authorizing, like, now funds will transfer, and donations will be made through one authorized bank, like the government run the State Bank of India. And but the thing was that these were anonymous donations, and the data was completely private. Nobody knew who was donating how much to which party, and this kind of was accompanied by some other amendments, which for instance, allowed foreign companies who have majority share in Indian companies to kind of donate to political parties. They were earlier prohibited from doing so. The government also kind of removed limits on how much an Indian company could also donate. I think earlier they could only donate 7.5% of their 3 years of net profits. But so, like, again, I think that it was issues like these. There were some critics that were kind of campaigning against this, rallying against this. But there was also this court case that was going on in the Supreme Court of India, after like these two NGOs and the Communist Party of India filed petitions, and they basically said that it is kind of legitimizing the electoral bonds, and its anonymous data is kind of legitimizing electoral corruption, that there is non-transparency. We don't know who's donating to who and how much, and how this like what is the relation, like the relations between politics and money. And it's also like, that it's the right, that voters have the right to information about the source of funding. And then finally, in February, the Supreme Court said that, it kind of struck down that electoral bonds are illegal. Voters have the right to information, to know about the sources of funding. And since then, it has kind of, like, the data, when it was made public, it has come to light that how, like, companies that were being investigating for money laundering donated billions of rupees to political parties,
Mm.
or
Including the
how,
ruling party, right?
or including the ruling party. And I think
Mm.
ruling party nationally, and also I think in different states. And it may not necessarily be BJP, but, like, parties across the board. But yes, primarily the ruling party. Also about how, companies who got government contracts, also, donated ahead of getting those contracts. So, like the connections or the links between corporates and political parties, and money and political parties. Like, I think, again, like I said, these things, people perhaps had a little sense that, okay, yeah, there are those behind the door meetings and deals that kind of go on, but this is like this one, that first time we're getting data to kind of make those links and prove that. We don't have all the data, but some data. So this is like a big issue this time that has got everybody talking, like political financing.
Mm. So now, with less than 3 weeks to go until the elections, we've also seen a leader of the Aam Admi Party, Arvind Kejriwal, arrested on allegations of corruption. In the same breath, India's largest opposition party, the Indian National Congress, has had its accounts frozen by the Income Tax Department. And this is because of filing their income tax returns late. But what does it say basically about fair competition among political parties in India? And also, what does it say about the level playing field ahead of the elections?
Yeah, I think it's moves like these that makes critics of the Modi government say that democracy is backsliding in India. That has kind of cast doubts of whether these upcoming elections will be free and fair, because Arvind Kejriwal, like, he is the chief minister of Delhi, the national capital. So he's like one of the most important opposition leaders in the country, and his arrest kind of follows the arrest of other opposition leaders we saw in like a couple of other states in India. We have been seeing, like, opposition leaders on, how space for opposition parties to kind of do their campaigning, just exist, is kind of decreasing. But why I think the Kejriwal arrest has got everybody talking is, of course, first, one thing is that he's the chief minister of Delhi, like the national capital, and it's not like a legacy party or a or a political royalty that the Congress party is kind of considered to be. Like Aam Admi Party, it translates into like the common man party, and it kind of emerged out of the India against corruption movement in 2010-11, and it was like, a party where genuinely common people joined, rose the ranks over the decade. And this party, it is like a very, very strong party. It has strong base in among the Delhi electorate, and it kind of made its place in Punjab, another state in India where it's ruling, and it's kind of, branching out. So it was like truly a people's party. And so kind of, it is to be seen, like everybody is kind of watching the news closely about how this will kind of play out now with the campaign, like election campaigns kind of underway, to see how even the opposition kind of uses this moment and mobilizes people. And also, usually when CMs are arrested for any case, they resign before that, but Kejriwal hasn't, and he's saying he's going to run the government from jail. So, that also is to be seen, that how that kind of plays out. Other prominent, other ministers and prominent leaders in his party uh, have been in jail for over a year for this liquor scam. So, but there is also the sense, that though the government has kind of denied these allegations, but that they're using the enforcement directorate, which is the financial crimes unit, investigation unit, and like, these laws, like, tax laws, or government agencies to kind of target the opposition. And it's like, again, things like these that get critics to say that democracy is declining, and then
Let me just cut in there. Let me just come in there. Okay. With regards to the Indian National Congress and its accounts being frozen, what are you hearing from the ground about what are people saying about this and how is it affecting their campaign at the moment?
I think it is to be seen how the Congress and the opposition kind of how they respond to it, how they use it smartly, how I think these things are kind of playing out in the media, but how they kind of get these issues about electoral bonds or about opposition leaders getting arrested, or how there is this unfair playing field. Like these issues, if they get into the public imagination and they get people to rally um, against them. But the thing is, like the opposition, and with these Aam Aadmi Party and Congress and other political parties, last year they came together as an alliance, which is like popularly called as the India Alliance, um, to kind of fight against the BJP, against Modi. But these are over 2 dozen parties that have kind of come together. And we've even before the elections were officially announced, we saw like some important regional parties kind of breaking away from the alliance. So people on the ground, they don't want like a coalition. Like there is this thing that they want like a strong and stable government, even if it's one party, that is the BJP, uh, versus like an alliance where there's so much infighting against them. There is like a kind of like an internal disarray. But I think, having said that, the Congress, since uh, the last year and a half, like when Rahul Gandhi, when he led this foot march from the south to the north, and this time from the east to the west of the country, when he was on the ground walking with people, it kind of helped him shed his prince like image, that he's a non serious politician, that like a political royalty. But again, I think it's kind of helped him with that, but he's not that. He doesn't come across as that strong leader or an orator, or sometimes, when he uh, sometimes he says things that kind of backfire against him. But I think it is to be seen, though the opposition and the alliance perhaps may not be as strong as the ruling BJP. It is to be seen, now in the next couple of months, how they kind of frame their politics, how they use these recent developments to their advantage.
So now, Serbi, when one looks at India, one really marvels at the strides the country has made. Like, for instance, in the satellite space. I mean, India has over the years launched several satellites. Last year, its spacecraft landed on the moon. India boasts of billionaires, nuclear bombs, and techs. But on the other side of this is abject poverty, with at least 63% of the population living in extreme poverty. This is according to United Nations poverty figures. Now, we recently saw an extravagant Ambani wedding in India that was attended by global leaders and high profile guests. To what extent does this lavish display of wealth and connections at this event really reflect on the political climate in the country? All this in light of economic inequalities and this same extravagance, does it have any implications for political messaging and voter sentiments ahead of the elections?
I think, like you said, India is a land of complications and also contradictions. On one hand, yes, we are making these strides and going to the moon. And on the other hand, we have such, levels of poverty. And then we had the Ambani wedding recently with its, extravagance. And but I think that is what it is. Like Indians kind of recognize that that there is inequality, that there is poverty, but they also feel like, oh, but that is the case even elsewhere, even perhaps in a developed country like the US. And so, why should this be pointed out and be highlighted? This was something that kind of came up whenever whoever wrote about the Ambani wedding, even in international media, that they said that, oh, this is a Western gaze, there's poverty everywhere. So, you know, if we have rich people, and we have rich people that kind of can can live the life that rich and other developed countries live. Like, there was a sense of kind of also pride that we may not be like a, a rich country, but we have the world's richest. And then, that they kind of, even with the Ambani wedding, that they kind of did it in a way which was very Indian, or like very cultural. And they are like, they're also Hindus, so in that they celebrated their religion and culture, and in a way that felt very Indian, which is like the Indian wedding. So yeah, I think in the public imagination, while at the same time, this extravagance, there is this, there were critics also who kind of said that, when there are such levels of poverty in India, why, you know, have such display of wealth, and why such wasteful why such wasteful displays of wealth, but there are always those who kind of appreciate, criticize. But at the same time, yeah, I think it also, what came to light was how, uh, there was this sense of government support that they had for some, like the Ambanis had for something like this. They had these celebrations in a small town, um, in of India called Jamnagar, but it's like an important town for the Ambanis. It's also where I think the world's largest oil refinery is, like, run by the Reliance Industries. But yeah, like, they have a small domestic airport, which kind of doubles up as a, I think the Air Force base, but it was granted, like, in the status of an international airport for 10 days, specifically for the wedding, to lay that carpet for like a private event of a particular, like, a rich family. Also kind of unsettled many, but it was also like this projection of the wedding was like projected as this also like a national event in India, that the way that the media kind of focused on it and covered it, and we were all kind of glued to our phones and television screens following it, everything, what was happening. And I think it also again put spotlight on this, that I think we in India, people kind of obviously, like, they know that how the Ambanis, Adanis, these big industrialists, corporates are close to the BJP. But again, the kind of government support they got, even with was like, a small, like, a thing like the airports status being changed or something like that, kind of again made showed that how the ruling party and the big corporates are kind of uh, allies, and their closeness was kind of, in a way, in very indirect way, seen. So yeah, I think ahead of the elections, in, like, yeah, in the Indians, it's like there are, like I said, there are these contradictions, but they're also very aspirational. They want to be seen, like, that they're not less than any other, any other, developed countries or nations or people. And they have, so yeah, so despite everything, they want to be, and then they also feel like they are this very old uh, culture, civilization, and they want to be celebrated for that. So yeah, it's a mix of everything.
Surbhi, thank you so much for your insights with regards to the upcoming elections.
Thank you so much for having me.
This week's podcast was produced by Finbar Anderson and presented by me, Kwangu Liwewe. For a deeper understanding of global news and current affairs, listen into New Lines Magazine's Global Insights every last Friday of the month on The Lead.